The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
We are on the record in the Karen Read murder retrial. I'm your host, Cody Thomas, and I'm here to break down Week 1's biggest courtroom moments. Karen Read, who was accused of killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, is back in court after her first trial ended in a mistrial. We're going to get right into day one, but first, let's get you caught up on the case.
I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
After deliberating in Dedham over 5 days, a mistrial in the case against Karen Read.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Read is the college professor accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend John O'Keefe, hitting him with her SUV after a night of drinking.
Free Karen Read! Free Karen Read!
She claims she's being framed in a massive police cover-up and that O'Keefe was fatally beaten inside a fellow officer's home. It's a case that has divided a community.
We believe there's a path for justice for John O'Keefe.
The jury of 6 men and 6 women visited the crime scene and heard testimony from 74 witnesses during the 9-week trial.
And all of a sudden, Karen said, there he is, there he is. Let me the F out of this car. And she started kicking the door.
I hit him, I hit him.
She repeated, I hit him.
And then she was saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And then she proceeded to say that she had a cracked taillight.
With no video or eyewitnesses, the first trial turned into a battle of the experts.
The vehicle traveled up to 24 miles per hour and approximately 62 feet.
What, if anything, occurred then?
The right rear of the Lexus struck the pedestrian John O'Keefe.
That does not look to me at all remotely like an impact from a motor vehicle.
We found a Google search that happened. First of all, the search was how long to die in cold, and it happened at or before 2:27 a.m.
I'm of no doubt that the only time those two searches were conducted was at 6:23 and 6:24 on the morning of the 29th.
The defense also raised questions about the police investigation.
Had you ever used a leaf blower in a crime scene preservation effort?
First time.
Not once did you mention that this video is actually completely inverted.
I did not know.
Lead investigator Trooper Michael Proctor also came under fire.
She's a whack job. No ass.
Now, Read faces a new jury, and new special prosecutor Hank Brennan plans to introduce new evidence, including molds made of Chloe's mouth. Chloe is the German Shepherd owned by the Albert family during the night in question.
Those wounds were inflicted by a dog attack.
But they actually got rid of the dog altogether.
Do you know that Chloe exists, that we provided notice to you, that we went up and saw Chloe and took molds?
New evidence could also include new testing of the SUV's telemetric system, new video of Brian Higgins at Canton PD, and Read's prior interviews, including with ABC News.
It's snowing. John has no coat on. It's windy. So I drop him off. He goes up the driveway and approaches the side door.
The changes might signal a different defense, and possibly the defendant taking the stand.
And you also mentioned to the media that there are some things that you wish that you could clarify. Is there any?
They'll be clarified one day, Matt. They'll be clarified. It might not be live, but it will be.
Day one kicked off with fiery opening statements. Prosecutor Hank Brennan says Read hit O'Keefe with her SUV in a drunken fight and left him to die in the snow, citing phone data and Read's own words. But the defense has a very different story. Alan Jackson says this is a cover-up, blaming corrupt cops and even suggesting O'Keefe was mauled by a dog and his body moved. A first responder was the first to take the stand, recalling Read saying, "I hit him 3 times. Then John O'Keefe's close friend, Kerry Roberts, described the frantic search that ended with O'Keefe's body in the snow. Let's take a look.
6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew what that meant. As the car pulled up to 34 Fairview, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed and he said, what happened? And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. You will learn that on January 29, 2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, and her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. She then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. She clipped John O'Keefe. He fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and she simply drove away. This man who helped, a lifetime of help, was left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help.
There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, a cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured, and that cancer has a name. And his name is Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. He didn't care about finding the truth. In his world, his priority was to protect the brotherhood, to protect that blue wall, to protect his friends who were at the Alberts house that night. You'll also learn after this incident and within days of one another, both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. And what else you'll learn, Brian Albert got rid of? Shortly after this incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house, the whole thing, just sold it. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations, he literally sold it mere months after this incident. Dog rehomed, phones destroyed, house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn. You'll learn that during the trial, the Commonwealth bears the highest burden known to our justice system. They must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt, and they're not going to be able to do that. Not when every piece of this case was handled by a disgraced investigator with a motive to protect his friends, not when the physical evidence contradicts their very theory, not when their own medical examiner won't call this case a homicide. By the end of this trial, you'll conclude that Karen Reed is not guilty of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV. There was no collision. She's the victim of a botched and biased and corrupted investigation that was never about the truth, folks. It was about preserving loyalty. And at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to return the only verdicts, all three of them, that are consistent with the evidence, the science, the truth, and justice. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
As you were nailing, I want you to take us to that moment. As you're nailing, trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, did you have a chance at any point to look up?
I did.
And when you looked up when you were trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, can you tell us who you saw?
I saw a middle-aged middle-aged female with blood on her face. And I, real quick, as I was in the process of providing ventilations, I said,
do you know this person?
When you looked up and saw that person and asked about any background, what did she say to you?
I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
What was the reason that you woke up?
I got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from Karen Reed.
Were you expecting a call?
No, I was not.
Had you ever received a call at 5 in the morning from Miss Reed before?
No.
Share with us what happened that morning. What did you hear?
Karen called and the first thing she said was, Carrie, John's dead. And then she hung up.
So as you approached Fairview, tell us what happens.
As we approached Fairview at the house. You mean the house or the street?
Yes, the house.
The house. Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And I said, okay. And as we approached the house, Karen from the back seat is now screaming, there he is, let me out of this car. And she's now kicking the back door to get out.
Okay, what happens next?
And then I unlocked the car. I looked over, I didn't see anything, and I unlocked it so she could get out of the back seat. I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And then I turned around and watched, and she ran over to a bound of snow.
When she started running, before she got anywhere, did you see anything at that point?
I did not.
The Court TV podcast will return.
On day 2, Carrie Roberts returned to the stand. She got emotional as she described finding O'Keefe's body and remembered Reed asking if she might have hit him, even pointing out her already broken taillight. The defense went after her hard, calling her memory into question and suggesting she was swayed by a mutual friend, Jen McCabe. Then came gut-wrenching testimony from John's mother, Peggy O'Keefe. She denied ever telling Reed that John looked like he'd been hit by a car, something Reed claimed in a media interview. The state played a 2020 clip when Reed talked about Peggy's suspicion. Prosecutors say that showed a consciousness of guilt. We also heard from law enforcement, first responders, and forensic technicians digging into data from O'Keefe's phone and Reed's behavior during her psych eval.
When you came out of Meadows, did you have a chance again to look at the defendant's taillight on her Lexus?
Yes, Karen pointed out and said, look, my taillight. And she said, do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him.
Did you have any reason to think at that point that she hit anybody?
No.
Did she ever repeat that phrase or question in the same or similar manner again that night?
She did at the scene where we found John.
How often was the yelling on the way to Fairview?
Oh, several times. It was like you couldn't control her. And I was trying to drive in a blizzard.
Can you take us back and describe for us what you're seeing?
His body was completely covered, but his head was completely covered. So I started to dig around his face and his eyes, and his left eye was fine, but his right eye looked like it was huge, like he had something happen to it. And after that, I told Karen to get off him. We were going to start CPR.
Was anything said at that point about her taillight?
About what?
Her taillight.
No, when the EMTs were around and they were working on the body, she was running around and saying, did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead?
When you were trying to save Mr. O'Keefe, did you ever see any signs of life?
I did not. And I checked his pulse. No, I did not.
You saw the interaction between all three of you and the vehicles, correct?
Yep.
At any point, did anybody stop and take a look at the taillight or the rear end of the car?
Not when we were entering the house like I thought, but when we came out.
Okay. And there's no video of that?
I'm sorry?
There's no video of that?
No, I don't believe so.
Right. So the video that does exist describes nearly exactly the time that you testified that y'all stopped at the back of the taillight and Karen said, Look, my taillight's broken. Oh my God, do you think I hit him?
Correct.
Right? Okay. And that obviously was incorrect.
It was incorrect.
So your memory was faulty about that incident, that part of that incident at least.
It happened on the way out of the house.
So your memory was faulty about that part of the incident that you testified to at the grand jury?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm showing you a photograph now.
Okay.
And could you tell us what you see?
That's my son?
Thank you. May I introduce this as an exhibit?
Yes.
I want to go back to the morning of January 29th, 2022. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Were you home?
I was home in Braintree.
In Braintree?
Mm-hmm.
Who were you with?
My husband.
Did you receive a phone call?
Yes, from Carrie Roberts. It was about 6:15, between 6:15 and 6:30 in the morning.
When she called you that morning, do you remember the conversation?
Yeah, she said John was found in a snowbank. And I didn't understand, which I said, what do you mean, found in a snowbank? She says, they found him in the snow. They don't know what happened. She says he's brought up to the Good Samaritan Hospital. Finally, they said, okay, you can go down. So we started walking down the corridor. And as I'm walking down, I hear Karen Reed yell, Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead? And I just kept walking. And then I asked, I don't know who it was, a nurse or a worker at the hospital, and I said, what is she doing here? And she says, oh, she's being psych evaluated. So then they brought us down to the room where my son was. He's bruised up, his eyes were closed. It's just not a good scene.
On day 3, tension rose right away. Judge ruled that jurors could see a clip of Reed mocking John's mother, Peggy. The courtroom felt it. Things heated up as the prosecution zoomed in on the couple's rocky relationship in the hours leading up to John O'Keefe's death. Special prosecutor Hank Brennan dropped a bombshell, a series of texts that paint a picture of a romance unraveling fast. In one text, Karen Reed asked bluntly, "Tell me if you're interested in someone else." John replies, "Nope. Things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that?" Then came the call log. Dozens of unanswered calls from Reed to O'Keefe that same afternoon. One message from John reads, "I am not answering, stop calling." But then came a twist. Michael Camerano, a friend of John's, painted a peaceful picture of the night before. He said Karen seemed caring, even trustworthy. The next morning when he went to pick up John's niece, Reed seemed distraught. The jury also heard clips from Karen Reed's own interviews where she downplayed how much she drank that night, though she did admit to being impaired.
In April of 2022, before the grand jury, Mr. Lally asked you, quote, "What, if any, questions did she ask you regarding hypothermia?" Do you remember that question?
I do.
Your answer was, she was just wondering if he could have survived outside in the cold even though he didn't have a jacket on. Do you remember giving that answer?
I do.
Now, 2024, last year, Mr. Lally asked you, so Firefighter Whitley, at some point, specific to your conversations with the defendant, Ms. Reed, can you describe sort of her demeanor or any observations you made in relation to that as you were speaking with her? And your answer was, yes. She asked if somebody could be alive in the snow without a jacket for many hours, correct?
Correct.
So, 2022, there was no mention of many hours. 2024, over time, now that's the first time that you mention the words many hours in your testimony regarding this case, correct?
Correct.
It always was a question, correct?
It was a question.
She never said what you said on cross-examination yesterday, which was she said that he had been out in the snow without a jacket on for many hours. That was not a declarative statement by Ms. Reed, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that. Was that a declarative statement by Ms. Reed?
She asked if he could be alive without a jacket in the snow for many hours.
So again, it was a question, sir.
She asked me.
I want to take you forward to January 28th of 2022.
Okay.
Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Had you, without any discussion of what might have been said, did you have any discussions with John that day?
Yes.
At some point, did you decide that you were going to spend some time or go meet John?
Yes.
Where did you go?
We went to C.F. McCarthy's.
Were you drinking?
Yes.
Was John drinking?
Yes.
Alcohol?
Yes.
How long were you there for?
A couple hours.
Did you do anything significant when you got home?
Put the kids to bed, my son, and no, I went to bed.
What's the next thing you remember happening?
Waking up to, I missed some phone calls.
Who were the missed phone calls from?
From my wife and Karen.
What did you do?
I called my wife.
After speaking to your wife, what did you do?
I got in my car and drove to John's house.
About what time was this?
In between maybe 5 and 6 a.m.
What was your mood at that point?
I was panicked.
You were very close with your friend John O'Keefe, correct?
I was close with him, yes.
And you actually met Karen Reed through John, correct?
Correct.
During the month before John's passing, that January of 2022, you observed their relationship in your presence to be normal, caring, and affectionate, right?
Yes.
You were asked a number of questions about the relationship between John and Karen that night. Do you know what was going on behind closed doors other than what you saw?
I'll allow it.
No.
Do you know whether or not John was trying to end the relationship with Miss Reed?
Objection.
Do you know that, sir?
No.
Next question.
Do you know if there was any jealousy in that relationship?
I mean, Karen wouldn't let, they did everything together, a lot of things together, and I thought at times, yeah, you could see, she didn't want other women around John.
From the defendant to John O'Keefe, tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. 2:25:18 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, nope. 2:25:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? So if the call is not answered, that means the call rang out and goes to voicemail. If the call is rejected, that is someone actively hitting the send to voicemail button to disable the call to stop it from ringing.
Your Honor, I'm going to introduce exhibits or clips 7 through 11.
The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. And he said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I had drank, so, and that led me to question, could I have hit him? Did I far over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Friday, day 4 of the trial. The jury took a field trip to see the scene of the crime. After thoroughly observing the lawn where John O'Keefe was found and Karen Reed's Lexus SUV, they returned to court to hear an expert testify to Reed's blood alcohol level and an EMT give his statement to Reed's behavior and statements upon finding John's body.
Her Honor explained to you, we're going to go to 34 Fairview Road. We have some exhibits that are already in evidence. You haven't had a long time to look at them and study them. But essentially, we're going to go to 34 Fairview Road. I ask you just to pay attention to the street, the front yard of the home. And you'll see to the left side of the front yard in the corner, there'll be a car. It's the Lexus that we've spoken about, the defendant's Lexus. And you'll also see a flagpole and a fire hydrant. And so I'd ask you to take a look from different vantage points. Take a look from that area where the flagpole is, from where the fire hydrant is. And you'll see on the street before the grass is a little berm, concrete that comes up a little bit. I'd ask you just to note that as you go there. One thing I'd suggest is April 25th, 2025, not January 22nd, 2022. So the weather will be very different. The temperature will be different. The conditions will be different.
Although the view is not evidence, I suggest to you that you will find it to be helpful, important, even necessary as you later do your investigation of this case within the four walls of this courtroom. You've already received into evidence, some photos and videos, but there is no substitute for your own two eyes. When we get to 34 Fairview, we will be pointing out certain things that we'd like you to observe. The house, the second floor window to that house, the three front doors in the front of the house, the driveway, the street, the front lawn, and the flagpole. And we'll be asking you specifically to consider the distance between that second floor front window and the front lawn. The distance between the front doors to the house and that front lawn. The distance between the driveway to the front lawn. And we'll be asking you to take a good look at that Lexus. Just stand next to it. Just size it up.
Do you recognize those records, sir?
Yes.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are the medical records of Karen Reed.
Doctor, what was the result of the testing for alcohol in the defendant's blood when it was taken shortly after 9 a.m. on January 29th?
93 milligrams per deciliter.
The Good Samaritan lab is a clinical lab, not a forensic lab. Is that right?
Correct.
And you'd agree that there are differences between screening tests that are conducted at hospitals and forensic tests that are conducted by law enforcement, right?
Yes. Our test system is a little bit different than the forensic testing system. When we compare our methodology to the headspace, we get the exact same results.
And Doctor, you did a number of other tests on Ms. Reed on January 29th, 2022. You tested for additional drugs, not just alcohol, correct?
Correct.
And all of those results were negative.
Correct.
I was the lead tech, so I'm the one documented, giving a report to the nurses, the staff. So I was more kind of getting that information, my initial triage questions, and then just kind of sat and supported Ms. Reed. And
Can you describe her demeanor or temperament?
Initially, she was agitated because she didn't feel like she needed to go to the hospital. But then there'd be periods of which she'd be calm, and it would fluctuate. She would have like pressured speech, repetitive, but all in all, she was cooperative. It's the last conversation she had with her husband at the time was an argument. I didn't feel like it was my role to really find out the details on what was said.
You were talking about an argument that they had, and then she was upset, and you were paraphrasing her. And one of the things that you paraphrased was, in fact, your statement was she was upset that was like her last words to him, correct?
She said that.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Were you also made aware, did she tell you that her last words to him were in voicemails? Did she say that?
She didn't give any details.
This week proved to be full of drama in Karen Reed's murder retrial. Two stark versions of the truth are taking shape. One, that Karen Reed snapped after a night of drinking and left John O'Keefe to die. The other, that she's a victim of a conspiracy far deeper than anyone imagined. The evidence is mounting, but the truth, still up for debate. Stay with us as we continue to give you the biggest moments in the trial. I'm Cody Thomas, and as always, thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you next time we go back on the record.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.